Settlers of Catan is probably one of the hottest selling board games out there right now, and it has been for some time. The guy at my local Games by James says that it's been their hottest selling game for the past 7 years running. If you're like me, you've wandered into a gaming shop and seen this at least a couple of times. Oh my god, where do I even begin? There's expansion sets, video games, card games, a Star Trek version, an Engage version. That's not even counting the scenario-driven expansions, the kids-themed kind, the pencil and paper version, iPhone, Android, PC, even cupcakes. There are freaking cupcake versions of this game. This thing is everywhere. I'm sure I'm not the only one to be overwhelmed by the sheer number of expansions, extra versions, and so on that get seen as soon as I wander into a game shop. Some game shops even have entire aisles dedicated to this game. It's that popular. Ironically enough, though, we start off with the red box, and no, as a D&D player, that's not lost on me. The original Settlers of Catan was designed to be a resource-gathering and territory game. You play the part of a group of settlers that have just moved to the uninhabited island of Catan. Once you've arrived, you have to build settlements and roads, collect resources, and expand your holdings to earn points. Right away, I'm impressed with the pieces. There's not hundreds of them like some games I could name, and they're very big and firm. That's what she said. When I saw the pictures and articles about this game, I was sure the pieces would be the size of a quarter or something. Nope. This baby takes up almost the entire table. I can palm one of these pieces. The Isle of Catan is made up of randomly placed hexes and then surrounded by ocean water bearing trade ships. The water helps hold it all together so it doesn't slide around on you. So you've got your island randomly set up like so. Each of these hexes represents a certain type of resource that you'll need. They all have corresponding cards for you to keep in your hand. Wood, grain, brick, stone, and sheep. There's no limit to how much you can have, but there's no reason to stockpile either, so the resource bank of the game will almost never run out. Next, you take these little tiddlywinks and place them randomly, one on each hex. The numbers are very important on deciding where you start. I try to be on a trio of numbers with high dot counts. The dots represent the frequency that those numbers will come up. 2 and 12 are hard to get resources, and 6 and 8 are going to come up the most. It's just math. So there we go, all set up. Now you pick your favorite color, you take your pieces, and get ready to settle. Yeah. To start the game, everyone places one settlement and 2 roads, like so. Remembering how often certain numbers will come up is important in deciding where you start. The intersections of each hex is a spot where you can build a settlement. Settlements count for 1 point and lay claim to that area. So you see here I'm surrounded by wood, stone, and grain. They have the numbers 3, 4, and 5. So if anybody rolls a 3 on the dice, I get wood. That's what he said. If anybody rolls a 4, I get stone, and so on. It's very easy. Now if you look, you'll notice there's no 7 on any of the hexes. The desert hex doesn't get a number, but instead is for the robber. It's probably the least threatening looking game piece I've ever seen in my life. Even when I first got this game out of the box, he looks old, shabby, and wooden. I almost threw it away the first day I had this game. It just looks dirty right out of the box. Let's replace him. There we go. That's our robber now. Now, the robber is moved whenever somebody rolls a 7. The person that rolled it can move the robber 1 hex to cover one of the numbers on the board. Now that number is blocked. So if the robber comes over to my wood hex with a 3 on it, I no longer get wood when somebody rolls a 3. At the same time, the person that moved him can steal a resource card from me. In addition, if anybody is holding more than 7 cards, the robber steals half of them in addition to the one my opponent took. It sucks. There are games where the robber just gets moved back and forth until someone has no hand at all. There's no faster way to just lose all your stuff. Recovering from a major resource raid like this is almost impossible. So if you're going to be aggressive with the robber, make sure you remember people will do the same to you. Be careful. He can turn the tide of any game, and if people keep rolling 7s, it can be disastrous. So you're going back and forth gathering resources. What do you do with them? Well, every player has one of these build cards. They're all the same, and they tell you things that you can do with certain combinations of resources. In order to spend them, all you have to do is turn them back into the bank. Roads you'll need to expand yourself. Settlements have to have at least 2 road segments apart from each other. It's okay to stay in the same relative area, but you have to have roads if you want to build several settlements and gather more resources. Settlements can give you access to more hexes for resources. Because they only have to be 2 intersections apart, you can focus them just like this. This triangle formation is a way to get more stone. I have 3 settlements touching this hex from their respective intersections, and they're 2 spaces apart. So whenever somebody rolls a 5, I get 3 stone instead of 1. It's a good way to stockpile what you need. Cities are settlements that you've already built being upgraded. Instead of 1 resource, a city will get 2 of a resource when its number comes up. It's very useful, but very expensive to build. The last thing you can trade resources for is the development cards. This deck hosts very useful one-time use things. There are cultural buildings that give 1 point each. There are free roads to help with your expansion. There are even knights, which move the robber in your favor without you rolling a 7. Playing several knights in a row is a great way to get rid of the robber from your side of the map and suddenly throw him into your opponent's face. There are also 2 achievement cards, the longest road and the biggest army. The longest road comes from having a road at least 5 segments long, and the biggest army comes from having at least 3 knights in front of you. These cards can be stolen if somebody builds a longer road or plays more than 3 knights, so you have to stay ahead if you want to keep them. So, all that out of the way, you can start. Each turn you roll the dice, and then whatever hexes have that number produce a resource for whoever is touching it. If no one is touching it, then nothing happens. Early on in games, especially 2-player games, it can be really slow while you wait for somebody's number to come up. But eventually roads start being built and it picks up. The island feels quite small by the end of the game, with roads going every which way and settlements and cities popping up everywhere. Having 4 players makes the board feel very crowded, so plan your strategy accordingly. Oh, I almost forgot trading. That's a big thing in this game. Suppose you've got a handful of stone and nothing to do with it. You can trade 4 of any resource to the bank and get 1 of whatever you want in return. You can also trade with your fellow players pretty much at will, as long as it's your turn. I've found that trading with other people is a lot better, as most people will agree to a 1-for-1 trade or a 2-for-1 deal. The bank's 4-for-1 is really not in your favor. There's ships around the ocean that will trade for less, but you have to build settlements next to them to use them, so make friends with at least one of your opponents. Trading will drive the game at certain points while everyone vies for that particular resource that they need. The only real complaint I can come up with for this game is the dice. You really can't plan ahead too much in this game, since the generation of resources is entirely random. You might go 10 turns before a certain hex's number comes up, or it might not come up but once or twice a game. You basically have to play the numbers based on probability. That's why the 6 and the 8 are red. They're the most likely resources to come up over and over. So if you surround yourself with 12s and 2s, things aren't going to go well for you. Some people won't like the hit and miss chance of getting resources based on a die roll. So just remember, it's a board game, not an RTS. When all is said and done, each settlement is worth 1 point, each city is worth 2, your development cards are each worth 1, and the achievement cards are worth 2 points each. The first person to reach 10 points wins, and that's all there is to it. Settlers of Catan is well designed, well balanced, and never takes more than an hour or 2 to finish. As far as hobby games are, it's shorter, sweeter, and more to the point than most. It's simple and only takes about 10 minutes to learn, and given that there are over 40 different versions, expansions, and things that go with it, plenty of people agree with me. Check it out.